The weight loss industry has made hundreds of billions of dollars knowing that you're going to buy the diets, the pills, the shakes, and the quick fixes. But what if the sustainable fix was actually in your brain? Today, we're getting into the neuroscience of emotional eating and specifically what happens to your brain and your body right before you crash out and binge eat. These are the patterns that connect your childhood emotions to your adult emotions and why you can't stop eating today. I'm Holly Bertone, former FBI Chief of Staff for Counterintelligence, now known as the Emotional Eating Profiler and Coach. My job at the FBI was to find the patterns that were hiding in plain sight. These were the ones that no one else could see. And I've spent years reverse engineering those same pattern recognition skills to determine why you emotionally eat and why you binge eat and why everything that you've tried has failed. And I want to break down why and how emotional eating happens from a different perspective today, and a perspective that I've never shared before. As you probably know, I'm trained under Chase Hughes, and credit where credit's due, the foundation for this episode today, it came from what I learned under him. But I don't just parrot what I learn. I actually take the time to analyze how this applies to the work that I do and the patterns that I see in the women who I coach. This is the CSI Red Yarn moment that combines the brain science with those patterns and emotions and how we respond. And we like to blame trauma for our emotional eating. And yes, of course, that's often a big factor. I want you to bifurcate the trauma and the emotions that are attached to it, because trauma is an event. Trauma is something specific that you can point to. You can say, this happened. But emotions are different than the event. These emotions, they accumulate over time. And you can't point to an emotion the same way that you can point to trauma. When you experience an event, your brain may or may not process the emotion that is attached to the event. When your brain actually processes it, you are in the clear. But when your brain does not process it, that emotion, that is when that emotion stays with you. And it gets stored in the limbic system in your brain. This is your primitive automatic driver, and it includes your amygdala, which is responsible for emotional significance and threat detection. Meaning, your emotions are not stored as memory, they are stored as a state. And when these emotions are not processed, they accumulate. And it's like, it's think of it like every emotion is one of those open tabs on your computer. And at some point, you're going to have so many tabs open, you're just going to run out of processing power. And we're going to get to that in a couple minutes. Now, over time, you adjust to these unprocessed emotions. Maybe you're the woman who needs to stay busy, or you can't sit in silence, or you thrive in chaos, or you need to control everything and everyone around you. One of my favorite books, which I recommend to my clients and students, is called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's by Bessel van der Kolk, which actually has been in the headlines lately because of a study published in the Frontiers of Systems Neuroscience. And what the authors found in this study is that the body, in fact, does not keep score. And instead, they argue that your brain is a pattern predicting machine. So after trauma, your brain is going to actively and ongoing predict danger. And to quote the authors, the body participates in trauma, but as a messenger. And then it goes on to talk about how your body operates out of the sympathetic nervous system, your stress state, or the parasympathetic nervous system, your peace state. My personal opinion is that both are true, and I can prove it in 15 seconds. When you are stressed, do you ruminate and do you feel it in your shoulders? When you're anxious, do you think about the worst case scenario and do you feel it in your gut? Now, obviously, this is oversimplistic to a complex function, But I want you to look at this from a holistic perspective, that your body is a whole and it works together, body and brain together. So for argument's sake, the body and the brain both keep score. By the way, if you're getting value out of this, hit that thumbs up and subscribe button. Back to your brain being that pattern predicting machine. It tags negative events that happened. So it's going to continue to constantly scan and monitor and predict those threats because it doesn't want it to happen again. It wants to prevent it from happening again. And what this looks like in real life, there's 4 things. Number 1, your amygdala becomes hypersensitized, meaning it's easier and easier for you to get triggered. Number 2, your prefrontal cortex, it loses executive function, meaning you become more and more impulsive. Now, let's just take the first 2. What happens when you are easily triggered and you make impulsive decisions? What do? You're correct if you say, hey, when I'm triggered, when I make impulsive decisions, I reach for the food, I emotionally eat. And you can also think about it from the perspective of this is why diets don't work. It's because you're getting triggered more and more easily, and you're also more impulsive, which between getting triggered and impulsive eating, it's going to win 99% every single time over any kind of diet. And then number 3, when you're in this state, the cortisol just stays chronically elevated. And when your cortisol is chronically elevated, it suppresses your immune function, which makes it easier to get sick, which impacts your sleep, and it contributes to visceral fat. So what happens when you don't feel your best, you don't get a good night's sleep, and you're feeling all fat and bloated? What do? And again, you're correct if you said, I emotionally eat. You should pay attention to this one because if over time your nervous system is constantly running on empty and you're consistently in that sympathetic stress state and you're flooded with cortisol and you're fueling your body with these sad little salads and then a bunch of processed comfort food, this is the environment where disease thrives. Autoimmune disease, cancer, heart issues. These are those open tabs on your computer that I was talking about. And when too many of these tabs get open, your computer crashes out, and so do you. And then number 4, finally, when you are in this state, it recruits friends. So think of this like the reticular activating system. This is bringing your thoughts and your feelings front and center. So for example, I feel fat and ugly, so I'm just going to finish the rest of the cake. Or I'm tired, so I'm just going to say, screw it and eat whatever I want today, and then I'll just start over tomorrow. You attract what your nervous system recognizes. And this is why you are constantly anxious. This is why you thrive in chaos and drama. This is why you need to control everyone. This is why you need to earn that validation, or you have to be the strong one. All of these things have one thing in common, and that is that peace feels boring and peace does not feel safe. This creates the perfect opportunity for our coping mechanisms to kick in, the quote unquote drugs of choice. Number 1, numbing, alcohol, shopping, food, binge watching TV, scrolling on social media. This is the avoidance. This is when you don't want to feel anything. Number 2 is performing. This is being the funniest in the room, or the helper, or the caretaker, or the overachiever. Number 3 is self-medicating with the same drugs, alcohol, shopping, food, binge watching TV, scrolling social media. But self-medication is actually treatment. This is, instead of avoidance, this is actually, I want to feel normal. And you're looking for that drug to feel normal. But I want you to remember this. Your drug of choice is not the problem. Your drug of choice is your brain's solution. So by now you're probably thinking, okay, Holly, enough doom and gloom. How can I fix this? There's one way to fix this. One way. And the good news is that that one way has a bunch of different modalities attached to it. And those different modalities are ones that you've probably heard of and are familiar with. And that one way to fix it is to change your perspective. When you're in these emotions, you are inside the box. All you can see is inside the box. Going back to when you numb or perform or medicate, you're running these automatic patterns and you can't see anything other than the inside of the box. The only patterns you can see are inside the box. But when you can look at the situation from a different perspective, from a higher perspective, or from a different vantage point, what this does is it sets off a cascade of neurological effects in your body. This is you taking your vantage point from inside of the box to outside of the box, to above the box. And when you do that, that is when you can start to process these emotions. Chase Hughes has a great quote, and he says, "Distance is where choice lives." Let me repeat that for you. Distance is where choice lives. So you've probably heard of some of these modalities that help you change your perspective. Things like EFT tapping, breath work, journaling, therapy, EMDR, meditation, NLP visualization, and many, many more. And I'll give you the perfect example of what this perspective shift looks like. When my ex-husband and I, when we were starting to talk about divorce, I immediately went into the anger and the bitterness and everything was his fault. And every conversation triggered me. But when I changed my perspective, when I started to focus on my 50%, when I started to focus on what I was responsible for, I became a completely different woman. I actually had a lot more peace and calm, and I just felt more grounded. My nervous system stopped looking for danger, and my prefrontal cortex came back online and started looking for solutions. This wasn't just an emotional change, it was neurological. And because of this, it changed not just how I showed up in the divorce, but how he showed up, which made the divorce as amicable as a divorce can be. Distance is where choice lives. And this is why the emotional eating forensics framework that I created is so effective. It's see it, stop it, shift it. When you can elevate your vantage point, you can actually see your patterns. You can name them. When they are in front of you on paper, staring at you, your brain has to look for a solution. And then once you have that distance, you can make a new choice. You can stop the old behavior. You can start training your brain for a new behavior, for a better behavior. And you do this by processing out those emotions. And then finally, it does take repetition. And with that repetition, you can create those new neural pathways in the brain. I did this on my own when I created the framework, which means you can do this by yourself too. But the fastest way to get results is when you have someone there to hold space for you, to be a mirror for you, whether that's a coach or a therapist. And if this is something that you're interested in, click below this video and it's going to take you to another page where you can join the Break Emotional Eating Accelerator, and for a one-time investment that is less than a typical Target run. Inside the Break Emotional Eating Accelerator, you're going to learn how to shut off these emotional eating patterns that are driving your cravings so that food stops controlling your life. And so those healthier choices are more automatic. And you'll get some pretty cool bonuses. And if you're the type of woman who wants to make that investment to go all in, I will leave a link for you to apply for private coaching. I only work with 3 or 4 clients at a time, and spots are limited based on availability. So thanks for tuning in. I'm Holly Bertone, and this is Weight Loss Forensics.